3 hours before the wedding. The woman New York would soon call Mrs. Vittori was kneeling on a cold marble floor, her hands shaking, waiting to find out if she would live or die. The man standing in front of her was Marcus Vittori, the most feared mafia boss in the city, the kind of man who erased people without raising his voice, the kind of man who never made promises he didn't intend to keep. Everyone believed their marriage was a fairy tale of power and passion. What no one knew was that it began as a death sentence disguised as a proposal. She had heard something she wasn't meant to hear. She had seen something she wasn't meant to survive. And when Marcus finally spoke, his words didn't sound like a vow. They sounded like a warning. "Marry me," he said quietly, "or you won't leave this room alive." Scarlett had learned early that people like her were meant to stay invisible. You worked quietly, kept your head down, and never looked too closely at the world of power glittering just beyond your reach. That night in Manhattan was supposed to be no different. She was only a temporary server, one of dozens hired to glide through a lavish charity gala hosted by men and women whose names appeared in financial headlines and whispered rumors. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen constellations above polished marble floors, and the air smelled of expensive perfume and unspoken secrets. Scarlett belonged to none of it. She was there to pour champagne, collect empty glasses, and disappear before anyone remembered her face. The warning had come early in the evening. A low, calm voice, carrying authority without effort. No staff on the 3rd floor after 9. Marcus Vittori hadn't raised his voice, yet everyone had stiffened. Scarlett hadn't known his name then, only the way the room subtly rearranged itself around him, as if gravity leaned in his direction. She nodded with the rest, filed the rule away, and went back to work. At 9:15, her manager stopped her near the service bar. The smile was tight, the eyes sharp. "3rd floor conference room," she said. "Go clean it. Now." Scarlett hesitated, reminding her of the rule, but the look she received made the choice for her. People like Scarlett didn't argue. They obeyed. The staircase grew quieter with every step. Music faded, laughter dissolved, and the air changed, heavier somehow. The 3rd floor corridor was dim, lit by wall lamps that cast long shadows like reaching fingers. Scarlett told herself she would be quick, in and out. She pushed open the conference room door, tray in hand, and froze. Voices echoed from the far side of the room. Low, tense, men speaking in the careful cadence of people used to being obeyed. Scarlett stood very still, heart pounding, as fragments of conversation drifted toward her. A name repeated, sharp as broken glass. A shipment, a betrayal. She didn't understand everything, but she understood enough to know she was somewhere she shouldn't be. She backed away, her shoe brushing softly against the marble. The voices stopped. Silence fell, thick and suffocating. A man stepped into the light. His gaze locked onto her with surgical precision. "Who's there?" Scarlett's breath caught. She tried to speak, to apologize, to explain, but fear glued her tongue in place. Another man moved, blocking the exit. In that moment, Scarlett knew something cold and absolute: she would not leave this floor the way she had come up. The door behind her opened. Marcus Vittori entered the room as if he owned the air itself. The tension shifted instantly, snapping into order. No anger crossed his face, no surprise. He took in the scene with one measured glance, then looked at Scarlett. His eyes were dark, unreadable, yet painfully aware of her. "Leave us," he said quietly. The men obeyed without a word. When the door closed, the silence felt louder than before. Marcus gestured once. "Come with me." Scarlett followed, legs trembling. Down a short hallway into a private study. The door shut. The click of the lock echoed like a verdict. Marcus leaned against the desk, arms crossed, studying her as if she were a puzzle with dangerous edges. Scarlett stared at the floor, waiting for the blow, the shout, the end. Instead, time stretched. Finally, he spoke. "You heard something upstairs." It wasn't a question. Scarlett nodded, tears burning her eyes. "I didn't mean to," she whispered. "I was told to clean, I know." His interruption was calm, almost gentle. That frightened her more than rage would have. He straightened, pacing once, twice, like a man weighing options. "Normally," he said at last, "someone in your position would not walk out of this room." Scarlett's hands clenched in her apron. Her sister's face flashed through her mind. The bills she still couldn't pay. The life she'd never had a chance to build. She swallowed, bracing herself. If she was going to die, she would do it standing. She lifted her chin. Marcus noticed. Something flickered in his expression. Not pity, recognition, perhaps. He turned away, jaw tight, as if the decision in front of him displeased him deeply. "There is," he said slowly. "One alternative." She looked up. Hope was a dangerous thing, but it flared anyway. "I'll do anything," she said, the words spilling out before she could stop them. He met her gaze again. "You don't know what you're offering." Then he delivered the sentence that shattered every expectation she had left. "Marry me." The world tilted. Scarlett stared at him, convinced she had misheard. What Marcus stepped closer, close enough that she could smell clean soap and something darker beneath it. "A marriage," he repeated, voice even, public, legal, immediate. Her heart thundered. "You're joking." He didn't smile. "If you leave here as you are, someone else will decide your fate by morning. As my wife, you become untouchable." Scarlett laughed weakly, hysteria creeping in. "You don't even know me. I know enough," he replied. "You listened. You didn't run screaming. You didn't try to bargain. And you stood up when you thought you were about to die." He paused. Those qualities are rare. The romance of it was non-existent. No tenderness, no promise of love, just survival wrapped in a ring she had yet to see. Scarlett felt the weight of the choice settle onto her shoulders. This wasn't a proposal. It was a door closing behind her and another opening into darkness. She thought of the men upstairs, the quiet certainty in their voices. She thought of how easily people like her vanished. "What if I say no?" she asked. Marcus didn't hesitate. "Then this conversation never happened. And you won't see sunrise." The truth of it landed with brutal clarity. Scarlett closed her eyes. When she opened them, the fear was still there, but something else had joined it defiance. "If I agree," she said softly, "I want one thing." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You won't treat me like a prisoner." Silence stretched again. Then, slowly, he nodded. "You'll have my name and my protection." Scarlett took a breath that felt like stepping off a cliff. "Fine," she said. "I'll marry you." Marcus exhaled, a sound she hadn't realized he was holding, for a fleeting second. His mask cracked, revealing not triumph, but something dangerously close to relief. "Good," he said, "because starting tonight, disappearing is no longer an option for you." As the door unlocked and the noise of the party rushed back in, Scarlett understood one terrifying truth. She hadn't been saved. She had been claimed, and whatever waited for her on the other side of that door would change her life forever. If this story touched your heart, follow the channel to enjoy many more heart-stirring stories every week. Scarlett did not remember how the rest of the night ended. She remembered fragments, the soft hum of the elevator as it descended, the way Marcus stood beside her without touching her, the subtle shift in how people looked at her when she walked back into the ballroom. Nothing had changed. Yet everything had. The same crystal chandeliers glittered overhead. The same music drifted through the air. But Scarlett felt as though she were moving through a different world, one where every glance carried weight and every smile concealed calculation. Marcus did not announce anything. He did not need to. A single word from him could rearrange destinies, but tonight he chose restraint. He escorted her out of the gala through a private exit, his hand resting briefly at the small of her back. Firm and impersonal. It was not a gesture of affection. It was a signal. Scarlett sensed it instantly. Anyone watching would understand she belonged under his protection now. The car ride was quiet. Manhattan's lights slid past the tinted windows like distant stars, unreachable and cold. Scarlett folded her hands in her lap, fingers intertwined to keep them from shaking. She wanted to ask questions, 1,000 of them. But she had learned something about Marcus already. He spoke when he was ready, not when silence made others uncomfortable. "You'll stay at my house tonight," he said finally, eyes fixed on the road ahead. "It's safer. Safer." The word echoed in her mind. Safer than what? She didn't ask. She nodded. The house was nothing like she had imagined. Scarlett had expected something dark and imposing, all stone and shadows. Instead, the mansion rose from behind iron gates with quiet elegance, its lights warm against the night. Inside, everything was immaculate but lived in. Fresh flowers stood in tall vases. Soft lamps glowed in hallways lined with paintings that looked old and expensive. This wasn't a fortress. It was a home carefully guarded from the world. An older woman met them in the entry hall. She took one look at Scarlett and smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. "So this is her," she said, voice rich with curiosity. Marcus stiffened slightly. "Rosa," he said. "This is Scarlett." "Welcome," Rosa said warmly, stepping forward and taking Scarlett's hands before she could react. "You look like you've had a long night." Scarlett managed a nod, overwhelmed by the sudden kindness. Rosa glanced at Marcus with a knowing look. "I'll have a room prepared." Later, alone in a guest bedroom larger than any apartment Scarlett had ever lived in, she sat on the edge of the bed and tried to breathe. The silence pressed in, broken only by the distant sound of the city beyond the walls. She was engaged to a man she barely knew, a man whose enemies could kill without hesitation, a man who had offered her safety at a price she was only beginning to understand. A soft knock came at the door. Marcus entered, jacket removed, sleeves rolled up, making him look less like the untouchable figure from the gala, and more like a man carrying too much on his shoulders. He stood awkwardly, as if uncertain where to place himself. "There will be a ceremony," he said. "Soon, quiet, legal." "So it's real," Scarlett said. Saying the words made her chest tighten. "Yes." He hesitated, then added, "You should know what you're agreeing to. This will not be simple. People will test you. They'll look for weakness." "And you?" she asked before she could stop herself. "What will you do?" His gaze met hers, sharp and unflinching. "I don't make promises I can't keep. No one will touch you." The certainty in his voice was absolute. It should have comforted her. Instead, it scared her. And after she asked quietly, "After whatever danger I overheard is gone," Marcus was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his tone was carefully neutral. "We'll discuss that when we get there." He turned to leave, then paused. "Scarlett." She looked up. "If you decide you can't do this," he said, "tell me now." Her heart pounded. This was the moment, the last opening in a door that was already closing. She thought of her sister, of the night spent counting dollars and hoping the phone wouldn't ring with bad news. She thought of the men upstairs at the gala and the ease with which lives like hers could be erased. "I'm not backing out," she said. Something unreadable crossed his face. Relief, perhaps, or regret. "Good," he said softly, and left. Sleep came fitfully. When Scarlett woke, dawn was breaking, pale light filtering through sheer curtains. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then reality rushed back in. The engagement. The danger. Marcus Vittori. At breakfast, Rosa chatted easily, asking Scarlett about her life, her family, her favorite foods, as if this were a normal morning and not the aftermath of a life-altering decision. Marcus listened more than he spoke, his attention flicking to Scarlett whenever she answered, as though committing her words to memory. Later that day, a woman arrived with a garment bag and a measuring tape. "For the dress," she said briskly. Scarlett stared. "Dress?" Marcus glanced up from his phone. "For the ceremony?" The finality of it settled in. This was moving faster than fear could keep up with. As Scarlett stood there being measured, she felt a strange mix of dread and something dangerously close to excitement, not for the marriage itself, but for the sense that she had crossed a line few ever did. That night, alone again. Scarlett wandered into the study by accident. Papers lay neatly arranged on the desk, names she didn't recognize. One, however, made her stomach drop. It was the same name she had heard whispered in the conference room upstairs at the gala. Caruso. The door creaked behind her. Marcus stood there, watching her with an expression that was not anger, but caution. "You shouldn't be in here," he said. "I heard that name before," Scarlett replied, heart racing. That night, Marcus closed the door. The air between them thickened. "That," he said quietly, "is why you can't walk away from this, in that moment." Scarlett realized something chilling. The marriage wasn't just protection. It was strategy, and whether she liked it or not. She was now part of a game where love was the most dangerous variable of all. The ceremony took place 3 days later. At dawn, when the city was still half asleep and secrets felt safer, there were no flowers, no music, no gathered guests whispering behind silk fans. Only a quiet courthouse room, a judge who did not ask questions, and 2 signatures placed on paper that carried more weight than any vow. Scarlett wore a simple ivory dress Rosa had chosen, her hair pinned back neatly, her hands steady despite the storm inside her. Marcus stood beside her in a dark suit, his posture composed, his expression unreadable. When the judge pronounced them husband and wife, nothing in the room changed. And yet Scarlett felt something inside her shift, like a door locking behind her. Outside, the morning air was crisp. Marcus placed his jacket around her shoulders without thinking, the fabric warm from his body. The gesture startled them both. He withdrew his hand almost immediately, as if reminded of the boundaries he had drawn himself. They rode back to the house in silence, the word wife echoing in Scarlett's mind, unreal and heavy. Life after the wedding settled into an uneasy rhythm. Scarlett learned the house quickly, its quiet corners and unspoken rules. She learned when to speak and when to listen, when to ask questions and when to let silence protect her. Marcus was distant but attentive, a constant presence at the edge of her awareness. He made sure she was escorted everywhere. He made sure no one raised their voice at her. He did not make sure she felt wanted. At night, they shared a bedroom divided by space and restraint. 2 beds stood apart, pristine and untouched. Marcus never crossed the invisible line between them. He never looked at her for too long. Scarlett told herself it was a relief. She told herself she didn't want more. The lie grew thinner with each passing night. The first crack appeared in the form of a dream. Scarlett woke with a sharp breath, the remnants of a memory clawing at her chest. She had been running, her feet slipping on marble slick with blood. Voices closing in from every direction. When she realized she was no longer alone, panic surged. Marcus stood at the foot of her bed, fully awake, concern etched into lines she hadn't noticed before. "You were screaming," he said quietly. She pressed a hand to her mouth, mortified. "I'm sorry." He hesitated, then sat on the edge of her bed, careful to keep his distance. "You're safe," he said. The words were simple, but his voice softened around them. Scarlett shook her head. "I don't think I am," she whispered. For a moment, Marcus looked as if he might reach for her. Instead, he curled his hands into fists. "Go back to sleep," he said gently. "I'm here." She did not sleep again that night. Neither did he. The next morning, the house buzzed with quiet tension. Visitors arrived, men and women who studied Scarlett with open curiosity and thinly veiled judgment. Some smiled too widely. Others didn't bother to hide their disdain. Scarlett stood beside Marcus, her posture straight, her expression calm. Even as her heart raced, she felt like a glass figure placed among stones, one wrong move away from shattering. Later, alone in the garden, she found Marcus watching her from the terrace. "They'll get used to you," he said, "or they won't. It doesn't matter." "It does to me," Scarlett replied. He frowned slightly. "Why?" "Because I don't want to be your weakness," she said. The honesty surprised them both. Marcus studied her for a long moment. "You're not," he said finally. But there was something in his eyes that suggested he wasn't entirely sure. That evening, Scarlett overheard a phone call she wasn't meant to hear. Marcus stood in the study, his back to the door, voice low and controlled. "Yes," he said. "She's in place. Caruso will make a move once he believes she's important enough." Scarlett froze, her pulse roaring in her ears. "No," Marcus continued. "She doesn't know. She can't." The words struck deeper than any threat. In place. Important enough. Scarlett stepped back before he could sense her presence, retreating to her room with shaking hands. The truth settled heavily in her chest. The marriage was protection, yes, but it was also bait. When Marcus came to her room later, she pretended to sleep. He stood there for a long time, his reflection faint in the mirror. This wasn't supposed to get complicated. He murmured to the empty space. Scarlett bit back tears. The complication arrived sooner than expected. 2 nights later, a shadow moved beyond the gates, too deliberate to be coincidence. The security detail tightened, whispers rippling through the house. Marcus canceled meetings, his focus narrowing. Scarlett watched him from a distance, seeing not the untouchable boss, but a man carrying the weight of choices that could destroy them both. That night, Scarlett made a decision of her own. She waited until the house settled into silence, then slipped into the hallway. Heart-hammering. She wasn't running. She wasn't confronting anyone. She was simply reclaiming a sliver of control. In the study, she searched the desk quickly, memorizing names, connections, patterns. Caruso's name appeared again and again, threaded through everything like a vein of poison. The door opened behind her. Marcus didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He simply closed the door and looked at her, disappointment flickering across his face. "You shouldn't have done that," he said. "I deserve to know," Scarlett replied, lifting her chin. "If I'm your wife, if I'm your shield, then I won't be blind, for the first time since they met." Marcus looked truly unsettled. "This isn't a fairy tale," he said. "People die, so do pawns," she shot back. The words hung between them, sharp and undeniable. Marcus exhaled slowly. "You're right," he said at last. "And that's exactly why I didn't want you involved." Scarlett's voice softened. "Then stop treating me like I'm already lost." Something in Marcus broke then. Just enough. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel his warmth. For a heartbeat. The space between them disappeared. His hand hovered near her face, trembling. Then he pulled away. "Get some sleep," he said hoarsely. "Tomorrow changes everything." As Scarlett lay awake in the dark, she realized the truth neither of them dared to say aloud. This marriage had begun without love. But love, once invited into dangerous places, never stayed quiet for long. Scarlett learned quickly that becoming Marcus Vittori's wife did not grant her warmth. It granted her attention. Everywhere she went, eyes followed. Some were curious, others openly hostile, most calculating. The house itself seemed to breathe differently now, as if adjusting to her presence. Staff spoke to her with careful respect, never familiarity. Friends of Marcus, if such a word applied, measured her with glances that lingered a second too long. The first official gathering came without warning. A luncheon hosted in the main salon, elegant and deceptively polite. Scarlett wore a pale blue dress Rosa insisted brought out her eyes. As Rosa fastened the last button, she squeezed Scarlett's hand gently. "They will test you," she said softly. "Let them." Scarlett nodded, drawing strength from the woman's calm certainty. She entered the room beside Marcus, his presence steady, his silence deliberate. Conversations dipped, then resumed, softer than before. Introductions followed, names flowing past Scarlett like a foreign language. She smiled when required, listened when spoken to, and kept her spine straight. She could feel Marcus's awareness at her side, a quiet anchor. Not everyone hid their disdain. A woman with dark hair and a smile sharpened by ambition studied Scarlett openly. "So," she said lightly, "you're the reason Marcus has been canceling meetings." The words were sweet, the intent was not. Scarlett met her gaze. "I didn't know I had that kind of influence," she replied. A flicker of surprise crossed the woman's face before she laughed and turned away. Marcus glanced at Scarlett, approval brief but unmistakable. By the end of the afternoon, Scarlett's head ached. She retreated to the terrace, grateful for the cool air and distance. The city stretched out below, vast and indifferent. She wondered how many people looked down from heights like this, believing they were untouchable. She wondered how many had been wrong. "You did well," Marcus said, stepping beside her. She didn't look at him. "They weren't trying to be kind." "No," he agreed. "They were trying to see where you'd break." And she asked. His mouth curved slightly. "You didn't—" The compliment settled between them, quiet and dangerous. Scarlett felt it anyway, a warmth she didn't want to acknowledge. "I don't want to be paraded," she said. "If I'm going to stand beside you, it has to mean something." Marcus turned to face her fully. "It does," he said. "Whether they like it or not." That night, the house tightened around them. Security doubled. Calls came in at odd hours. Marcus moved through it all with controlled intensity, issuing instructions, listening, deciding. Scarlett watched him from the edges, seeing the cost beneath the composure. When he finally returned to their room, his shoulders sagged slightly, the smallest admission of exhaustion. "They're restless," he said, loosening his tie. "Caruso is watching." Scarlett's pulse quickened. "Watching me?" "Yes." She took a breath. "Then stop pretending I don't exist when you talk about strategy." The words surprised him. He paused, studying her. "You're not pretending," he said slowly. "You're involved." "Then say it," she replied. "Say it to them." The opportunity came sooner than either expected. 2 days later, a dinner invitation arrived, formal, public, impossible to refuse, hosted by one of the old families, neutral ground in name only. Scarlett sensed the trap immediately. Marcus read it too. "They want to see you under pressure," he said. "Let them," Scarlett replied, echoing Rosa's words. The dinner unfolded with surgical precision. Long table, carefully arranged seating, conversations that cut deeper than knives. Scarlett felt Caruso's absence like a presence. His influence threaded through the room. At one point, a man raised his glass. To Marcus, he said, and his unexpected marriage. The pause was deliberate. Scarlett felt it like a hand at her throat. Marcus was about to speak when she did instead. "Unexpected," she said evenly, lifting her own glass. "But not accidental." The table went still. "We all make choices," she continued. "Some in the open, some in the dark. I prefer the open." A ripple of murmurs followed. Marcus's gaze locked on her, sharp with surprise and something else respect, edged with concern. The conversation shifted, cautious now, as if recalibrating. Later, In the car, silence reigned. Finally, Marcus spoke. You challenged them. Scarlett met his eyes. I drew a line. He exhaled slowly. That line will be tested. I know, she said. But it's mine. That night, Scarlett couldn't sleep. She wandered the house, restless, until she found herself back on the terrace. The city glowed below, indifferent as ever. Footsteps approached. Marcus joined her, hands in his pockets. Caruso will respond, he said. Soon. Scarlett nodded. Then I'll be ready. He looked at her then. Truly looked at her. As if seeing the woman she was becoming rather than the protection he had offered. I never wanted this life for anyone else, he said quietly. I chose it, she replied. When I chose you. The words hung between them, fragile and fierce. Marcus reached out, stopping just short of touching her hand. For a moment, the distance between them felt unbearable. Then a phone vibrated, shattering the spell. He answered, listened, and his expression hardened. We have a problem, he said. What kind? Scarlett asked. The kind that doesn't ask permission, he replied. Caruso made contact. Scarlett felt fear rise and something else beneath it. Resolve. Then it's time they stop watching, she said, and start listening. Marcus studied her, then nodded once. In that moment, Scarlett understood the shift she had forced into being. She was no longer simply the woman who should have disappeared. She was the woman they could no longer ignore. The call changed the house. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but Scarlett felt it in the way doors closed more quietly, in the way guards shifted positions without speaking. Marcus disappeared into meetings that lasted hours, emerging with his jaw tight and his eyes darker than before. No one explained anything to her, yet no one ignored her either. It was as if the house itself was waiting to see what she would do. She did not ask questions at first. She watched. She listened. She learned the rhythm of danger the way one learned the rhythm of rain. By noticing when the air grew heavy before the storm, Caruso had made contact. But not directly. Messages arrived through intermediaries, polite on the surface, edged with menace beneath. Invitations that were not invitations. Warnings dressed as courtesies. Scarlett sensed the strain in Marcus long before he admitted it. One evening, she found him alone in the study, staring at nothing, a glass untouched at his side. The room was dim, lit only by a single lamp that cast sharp shadows across his face. He looked older there, the weight of years pressing down without the armor he wore in public. You're not sleeping, she said quietly. Neither of them pretended surprise at her presence. Marcus exhaled slowly. Neither are you. She stepped closer, careful not to crowd him. Caruso scares them, she said, but he scares you differently. Marcus's eyes flicked to her. For a moment, she thought he would shut her out again. Instead, he leaned back, the chair creaking softly. Caruso isn't afraid of chaos, he said. He thrives in it. So do you, Scarlett replied before she could stop herself. A humorless smile touched his lips. No, he said. I survive it. Silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken truths. Scarlett folded her hands together. You don't have to tell me anything, she said. But if I'm standing beside you, I need to understand what you're fighting. Marcus studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded once, as if making a decision he had avoided for years. Sit, he said. She did. My mother was killed when I was 10, he began, his voice even, detached, as if he were recounting someone else's story. We were leaving a restaurant. She was laughing about something trivial. I remember thinking she sounded happy. His gaze drifted to the window. A car pulled up. Someone shouted. Then she was on the ground. Scarlett's chest tightened. She did not interrupt. She died before the ambulance arrived. Marcus continued. I held her hand. It was still warm. His fingers curled unconsciously. The man who ordered it was someone my father trusted. Someone we welcomed into our home. Scarlett felt the pieces align. The cold logic behind Marcus's obsession with control, with loyalty, with never trusting too much. And Caruso, she asked softly. He learned from that man. Marcus said, he learned that fear is more useful than respect, and chaos more profitable than peace. Scarlett swallowed. Is that why you married me? The question slipped out, fragile and sharp all at once. Marcus turned to her, and for the first time, his composure fractured. I married you because you were in danger, he said. Because walking away would have killed you. He paused, then added, quieter. But I kept you close because Caruso watches what matters to me. The honesty hurt more than lies would have. Scarlett nodded slowly. So I'm leverage. You're more than that, Marcus said immediately. But yes, you're also leverage. The admission hung between them, heavy and raw. Scarlett stood, the movement abrupt. She crossed to the window, staring out at the city lights that blurred with unshed tears. You should have told me, she said, before I had to guess. Marcus rose too, stopping a careful distance behind her. I didn't want to drag you into this, he said. I wanted to keep you untouched. She laughed softly, bitter. That stopped the moment I walked into that room upstairs. She turned to face him. I don't need to be protected from the truth. I need to be trusted with it. Marcus searched her face, something like regret flickering there. I don't know how to keep people safe, he said. I only know how to make sure they don't die. Scarlett stepped closer, close enough now that the tension between them was impossible to ignore. I'm not asking you to save me, she said. I'm asking you to stand with me. For a heartbeat. Marcus didn't move. Then, slowly, he reached out and took her hand. The contact was tentative, almost reverent. His thumb brushed lightly over her knuckles, a gesture so intimate it stole her breath. If I let you all the way in, he said, voice low, there's no turning back. I already didn't turn back, Scarlett replied. The moment shattered when a knock sounded at the door. Marcus released her hand instantly, the mask sliding back into place. A guard stepped in, face grim. There's been an incident, he said. One of our cars was hit. No casualties. Message only. Marcus's eyes hardened. Caruso. Yes. Scarlett felt fear surge, sharp and immediate. But beneath it was something else now, steadier. Purpose. Then he's escalating, she said, which means he's impatient. Marcus looked at her, surprise flickering. You think like this now. She lifted her chin. I listen. That night, as Scarlett lay awake, she replayed everything Marcus had told her. The boy holding his mother's hand. The man who built an empire to make sure that kind of loss never touched him again. She realized the truth he hadn't said aloud. Loving her would put her in the same place his mother once stood. The realization terrified her. It also made her fiercely determined. Across the room, Marcus sat in the dark, watching her sleep, his expression unreadable. For the first time in years, the past he had buried was awake, and the future he had never allowed himself to imagine was standing too close to ignore. The morning after Marcus told her the truth, Scarlett woke with a clarity that felt almost dangerous. Fear was still there, coiled tightly in her chest, but it no longer ruled her. She had crossed something in the night, a quiet threshold from protected to involved, from someone being moved on a board to someone who could see the shape of the game. When she came downstairs, the house was already alive with tension. Phones rang in muted tones. Guards moved with sharper purpose. And Marcus stood at the center of it all, issuing instructions with calm authority. He glanced at her as she entered the room. Just once, the look held a warning she understood instantly. Stay where you are. Let me handle this. Scarlett obeyed. At first, she spent the morning with Rosa, pretending at normalcy while her thoughts raced. Over tea, Rosa spoke gently about flowers that needed pruning and recipes passed down through generations. But her eyes were alert, listening even when she spoke of harmless things. This life asks for a strong spine, Rosa said quietly, as if commenting on the weather. Not just a strong heart. Scarlett met her gaze and nodded. She was beginning to understand what that meant. By afternoon, news arrived that shifted everything. One of Marcus's business partners had been approached directly, not threatened, courted. The message was clear enough to anyone who understood the language of power. Caruso was testing boundaries, seeing how far he could reach without blood. Marcus closed himself in the study with his advisors. Scarlett paced the hallway outside, restless. Every instinct told her this was not a moment to wait quietly. She replayed the names she had memorized, the patterns she had noticed. Caruso didn't strike blindly. He tempted, he provoked, and he watched who flinched first. When the door finally opened, Marcus stepped out, his expression tight. We're increasing security, he said, more to himself than to her. You won't leave the house. Scarlett stopped walking. That's not a solution, she said. He turned sharply. It is if it keeps you alive, and if it makes him bolder, she countered. If he sees me disappear, he wins without firing a shot. Marcus stared at her, anger flashing briefly in his eyes. This isn't a debate. Then stop pretending I'm part of this, Scarlett replied. The words cut deeper than she intended, but she didn't take them back. You can't tell me the truth and then expect me to hide like I don't matter. The silence that followed was heavy, dangerous. Marcus took a step toward her. You matter too much, he said. That's the problem. Scarlett's voice softened. Then, let me help. He shook his head. You don't help by putting yourself in front of a man like Caruso. I help by not being predictable. She said, by showing him I'm not afraid. Marcus's jaw tightened. Fear keeps people alive. So does respect, Scarlett said. And he doesn't respect someone who hides? The argument ended without resolution. Marcus walked away. The decision clearly made. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. That evening, an invitation arrived addressed to Scarlett by name. A charity gala, public, high profile, impossible to ignore. Hosted by a foundation loosely tied to Caruso's network, the message was elegantly worded, the threat woven invisibly through every line. Marcus tore the envelope in half. You're not going? Scarlett picked up the pieces calmly. He wants me there. Exactly, Marcus said. And that's why you won't be. Scarlett met his gaze steadily. You said Caruso watches what matters to you. If I don't show up, he learns that I'm controlled. If I do, he learns I choose. Marcus laughed once, sharp and bitter. You think you can outplay him? Scarlett replied. I think I can make him reveal himself. Marcus stared at her, torn between fury and something like admiration. You crossed that line, he said quietly, and I won't be able to pull you back. Scarlett didn't hesitate. I'm not asking you to. The gala glittered with false benevolence. Scarlett arrived alone, her posture calm, her dress elegant but understated. The room noticed immediately. Whispers followed her as she moved through the crowd, each step a declaration. She felt exposed, but she did not falter. She sensed him before she saw him. Caruso stood near the center of the room, his presence oily, his smile too smooth. When their eyes met, his expression flickered with interest. He approached slowly, as if savoring the moment. Mrs. Vittori, he said, voice warm and practiced. I was beginning to think you wouldn't come. Scarlett smiled politely. I don't like to disappoint. They spoke of trivial things at first, charity, art, the city, beneath it all. A duel unfolded, careful and restrained. Caruso leaned closer. You must be very brave, he murmured. Or very naive. Scarlett held his gaze. I've learned there's a difference between fear and obedience. Something sharpened in his eyes. Your husband won't like this. My husband, Scarlett said evenly, trusts me. It was a lie. Or perhaps a challenge. Caruso studied her, then smiled wider. We'll see. By the time Marcus arrived, the damage was done. He found Scarlett on the terrace, the city lights reflecting in her eyes. What did you do? He demanded. Fear breaking through his control. I drew him out, she said. He spoke to me, publicly. He wanted you to see. Marcus dragged a hand through his hair. You put yourself in his line of fire. Scarlett stepped closer. I stepped into it, she said, so he would stop circling, for a long moment. Marcus said nothing. Then, quietly, I should be furious. But you're not, Scarlett said. No, he admitted. I'm terrified. The confession hit her harder than anger ever could. Scarlett reached for his hand, gripping it tightly. I won't be hidden, she said. Not anymore. Marcus squeezed back, his control fraying. In crossing that line, Scarlett had changed the rules, and both of them knew there would be no safe way back. The consequences arrived faster than Marcus expected, and exactly when Scarlett feared they would. 2 days after the gala, the city felt wrong to her, as if New York itself had shifted its weight. Traffic snarled where it usually flowed. Phones rang and went silent too quickly. Marcus canceled meetings and returned home early, his attention sharp, restless. He tried to keep Scarlett close without saying so, moving through rooms with her always in his peripheral vision. She noticed. She said nothing. That evening, the power went out for exactly 30 seconds, just long enough to feel intentional. When the lights returned, Marcus was already on his phone, issuing clipped instructions. Lock the perimeter, he said. No one in or out. Scarlett stood in the doorway, pulse racing. This is him, she said. Marcus didn't deny it. Go to the safe room. Scarlett shook her head. Not yet. He turned sharply. This isn't negotiable. Then neither is what comes next, she replied. If he wants to scare me into hiding, I won't give him that. Marcus stepped closer, his voice low and urgent. You crossed a line at the gala. He won't forgive that? I didn't ask him to, Scarlett said. I asked him to notice. The argument ended the way all their recent ones did, unfinished, heavy with things neither could afford to say. Scarlett went to change, choosing clothes that allowed her to move easily. When she returned to the bedroom, Marcus was waiting, tension carved into his posture. "Where are you going?" he asked. "Downstairs," she said. "I won't be alone?" He exhaled sharply. "You should be." The knock came before either could move. It was polite, almost courteous. Marcus's hand went instinctively to the concealed weapon at his side. "Stay here," he told Scarlett. She didn't listen. She followed him into the hall as guards converged, weapons drawn but not raised. At the door stood a man Scarlett didn't recognize, smiling too easily. A message. He said, "From Mr. Caruso." Marcus's expression was lethal. "You have 10 seconds." The man handed over a phone, already playing a video. The image was shaky, dark. Scarlett's breath caught as she recognized the location, a side street near the foundation where she volunteered once a week. Her route, her time, her habits. The camera panned, lingering on a familiar doorway. Caruso's voice filled the hall, smooth and amused. "You're brave, Mrs. Vittori," he said, "but bravery needs guidance." The video ended. Scarlett felt the room tilt. Marcus crushed the phone in his hand. "Pack a bag," he said to a guard. "We're moving her now." "No," Scarlett said. He rounded on her. "This is not the moment." "It's exactly the moment," she interrupted. "He knows my routine because I let him. Because I wanted to see how far he'd go." Marcus stared at her, fear and fear warring in his eyes. "You used yourself as bait. I warned you," she said quietly. "I wouldn't be hidden." The decision was taken from them an hour later. They were driving 2 cars, heavy security when the lead vehicle swerved violently. Tires screamed. Glass shattered. Marcus shouted, pulling Scarlett down as gunfire erupted, sharp and deafening. The world fractured into noise and motion. Their car slammed into a barrier, momentum hurling them sideways. For a moment, everything went white. When Scarlett came to, smoke filled the air. The car door hung open, twisted metal groaning. Marcus was moving, already shouting orders, blood running from a cut on his forehead. "Get her out!" he barked. Before anyone could reach her, hands grabbed Scarlett from behind. She screamed. The sound ripped away as a cloth pressed over her mouth. The world spun. Marcus's voice cut through the chaos, raw and unrestrained. "Scarlett." Then there was nothing. She woke to darkness and pain. Her head throbbed. Her wrists were bound, but not tightly. That detail registered immediately. Whoever had taken her wanted her conscious, wanted her thinking. Scarlett forced herself to breathe evenly, listening. A door opened. Light spilled in. Caruso stepped into view, exactly as she remembered him, polished, smiling, eyes sharp with amusement. "I was wondering how long it would take you to wake up," he said. Scarlett swallowed. "You could have killed me." Caruso laughed softly. "That would have been too easy. Besides, I wanted to see if you'd still look at me the way you did at the gala." She lifted her chin. "Disappointed, delighted?" He replied. "You didn't wait to be rescued. That makes you interesting." Scarlett tested the bindings again. Subtly, loose enough to slip if she was patient. "You're using me to hurt Marcus," she said. "You won't get what you want." Caruso leaned closer. "I already have." "He's terrified." The word struck, but Scarlett didn't let it show. "You underestimate him. And you," Caruso said, "overestimate yourself." When he left, Scarlett acted. She worked the bindings methodically, ignoring the ache in her wrists. The guards outside were careless, confident. She used that. When the door opened again, she was ready. The moment came and went in a blur of motion pain. Surprise. Opportunity. Scarlett ran. She didn't know how long she moved through corridors and stairwells, guided by instinct and desperation. Alarms blared. Shouts echoed behind her. She burst through at the service exit into the night, lungs burning, freedom so close it hurt. Marcus found her an hour later, bloodied, frantic, relief breaking him open when he saw her standing on the sidewalk, shaking but alive. He pulled her into his arms without hesitation, holding her like he might never let go. Scarlett clung to him, breath hitching. "I didn't wait," she whispered. "I got out." Marcus pressed his forehead to hers, voice rough. "I know." In that moment, something fundamental shifted. Scarlett had been taken, but she had not been broken. And Caruso had learned a truth that would cost him dearly. She was no longer a weakness waiting to be exploited. She was a force he had underestimated. After the abduction, the house no longer felt like a refuge. It felt like a nerve, exposed and vibrating. Scarlett sensed it the moment she stepped inside again, wrapped in Marcus's coat, her hands still trembling. The walls that once promised safety now reminded her how easily safety could be breached. Marcus moved through the space like a storm contained, issuing orders, demanding updates, his voice controlled but edged with something dangerous. For the first time since she had met him, Scarlett did not retreat into silence. She refused the doctor's sedatives. She refused to be escorted to bed. When Marcus tried to guide her upstairs, she stopped him with a hand on his chest. The contact was brief, but it stilled him instantly. "No," she said. "I'm done disappearing." He searched her face, fear flickering openly now. "You nearly died. I survived," Scarlett replied, "and that changes things." The days that followed were tense. Filled with strategy meetings Scarlett was no longer excluded from. She sat at the edge at first, listening, absorbing the language of power spoken without ornament. Names, roots, loyalties. Marcus's men were cautious around her, uncertain how to treat a woman who had been taken and returned. Some looked at her with sympathy, others with suspicion. Scarlett noticed everything. During one meeting, a man dismissed her presence with a careless glance. With respect, he said to Marcus, "This isn't her place." The room went quiet. Marcus's jaw tightened. But before he could speak, Scarlett did. "You're right," she said calmly. "It isn't my place." The man relaxed. Satisfied too soon. "It's yours," Scarlett continued, turning to him fully, "because you're the one who failed to anticipate Caruso's move." The man flushed. Murmurs rippled through the room. Marcus watched her closely, surprise flickering into something else. Approval. From that moment on, they listened. Scarlett didn't argue with Marcus's authority. She complimented it. Where he projected force, she offered insight. Where he saw threats, she saw motivations. She spoke rarely, but when she did, the room shifted. She remembered Caruso's smile, the way he enjoyed being underestimated. She used that knowledge, tracing patterns, pointing out gaps in his behavior others missed. "He wants to be seen," she said during one late-night discussion, "but only on his terms. If we force him into the open, he'll overreach." Marcus studied her, a slow realization dawning. "You're suggesting we bait him." Scarlett nodded. "Not with me," she said before he could object. "With something he can't ignore." The answer came unexpectedly, a negotiation summit, a gathering of families meant to stabilize tensions after the recent violence. Public, controlled, and impossible for Caruso to avoid. Scarlett's name appeared on the guest list beside Marcus's, deliberate and unmistakable. Marcus confronted her in private. "You're pushing too fast. I'm pushing at the right moment," Scarlett replied. "He expects you to lead with power. He doesn't expect me to speak." "That's what makes it dangerous," Marcus said. "That's what makes it effective," she countered. On the night of the summit, Scarlett wore black, simple and severe. As they entered the hall together, the atmosphere tightened. Conversations paused, heads turned. She felt it again, that familiar sensation of being watched. But this time, she didn't shrink. She stood tall, her hand resting lightly on Marcus's arm, not for support, but for emphasis. Caruso arrived late, as predicted. His gaze found Scarlett immediately, a flash of interest crossing his face before he masked it. When the discussions began, voices clashed politely. Each word weighed and sharpened. Marcus spoke with authority, setting terms, drawing lines. When it was Scarlett's turn, the pause was deliberate. She rose slowly. "We keep talking about territory and retaliation," she said evenly. "But the truth is simpler. Chaos benefits only one person." Eyes turned toward Caruso without her naming him. His smile thinned. "We can keep bleeding each other," Scarlett continued. "Or we can agree that anyone who profits from provoking conflict is the real enemy." A murmur followed, uneasy but thoughtful. Caruso leaned back, studying her openly now. "You're very confident," he said. "For someone who was kidnapped." Scarlett met his gaze. "Confidence is what happens when fear stops working." The room held its breath. Marcus didn't interrupt. He didn't need to. The balance had shifted, subtly but irrevocably. Scarlett wasn't arguing. She was reframing the entire conflict. After the summit, whispers followed her, not of pity, but of curiosity, respect, edged with caution. Marcus noticed the change immediately. "They see you differently," he said quietly as they left. "So do you," Scarlett replied. He didn't deny it. That night, back at the house, the distance between them finally fractured. The adrenaline faded, leaving behind something raw and unguarded. Marcus found Scarlett on the terrace, the city lights reflecting in her eyes. "I should have protected you better," he said. Scarlett turned to him. "You did," she said. "You just didn't expect me to fight back." He reached for her then, slowly, as if giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His hand cupped her face, his touch warm and steady. The kiss that followed was gentle, almost reverent, carrying weeks of restraint and fear and unspoken longing. It wasn't about ownership. It was acknowledgement. When they finally pulled apart, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. "Caruso will come for us harder now." Scarlett nodded, unafraid. "Let him," she said. "He finally knows who he's dealing with." As the night settled around them, both understood the truth. Scarlett was no longer the woman who had survived by chance. She was shaping the battlefield now, and love, once fully awakened, had become their most dangerous weapon. The city braced itself for violence, but it didn't come the way anyone expected. After the summit, rumors spread faster than threats. Alliances wavered. Old loyalties creaked under the weight of new calculations. Caruso went quiet, and that silence frightened people more than gunfire ever could. Marcus felt it in the way his phone stopped ringing, in the way men who once demanded meetings now asked for reassurance. Scarlett felt it too, an invisible pressure tightening around them both. The invitation arrived at dawn, delivered without ceremony. A closed-door council, the table, every major family represented. Caruso's seal pressed into the envelope like a challenge. Marcus read it once, then again. "He wants this public among our own," he said. "No weapons, no interruptions." Scarlett folded the letter carefully. "He wants legitimacy," she replied. "Or an audience. Or both." Marcus said. He looked at her, the unspoken question hanging between them. She didn't wait for him to ask. "We go together," she said. The room where the table stood was older than the city around it, carved from stone and history. 12 seats, 12 legacies. The air carried the weight of promises broken and blood remembered. Scarlett entered beside Marcus, her presence no longer an anomaly but a statement. The room stilled as eyes tracked her, measuring, reassessing. Caruso arrived last. He wore confidence like a tailored coat, smiling easily as he took his seat. "Marcus," he said warmly, "and Mrs. Vittori, I'm glad you could join us." Scarlett met his gaze without flinching. "You wouldn't have started without us." A few men shifted. Marcus said nothing, his silence a calculated blade. The discussion began cautiously, words chosen with care. Territories, revenues, stability. Caruso spoke of unity, of the dangers of fragmentation, his voice smooth, persuasive. He painted himself as a peacemaker burdened by Marcus's inflexibility. When it was Marcus's turn, he leaned forward slightly. "You talk about peace," he said. "But chaos has followed you everywhere you've gone." Caruso smiled. "Correlation isn't causation." Scarlett inhaled, then stood. The movement alone commanded attention. "It is when the same person benefits every time," she said calmly. "You provoke conflict, then sell protection. You destabilize, then offer solutions." Caruso's eyes sharpened. "Bold accusations." "Not accusations," Scarlett replied. "Observations." She began to speak, laying out patterns she had traced meticulously. Deals that collapsed just before Caruso's men arrived. Rivals weakened by anonymous tips. Violence that erupted in precisely the places he later absorbed. The room grew quieter with every word. Caruso laughed lightly. "You expect us to take strategy lessons from a woman who married into this world by accident?" Scarlett didn't hesitate. "There are no accidents here," she said. "Only opportunities. You taught me that." A murmur rippled around the table. Marcus watched her, tension and pride warring in his expression. Caruso leaned back, studying her as if she were a new variable he hadn't accounted for. "You're very convincing," he said. "But convincing isn't proof." Scarlett nodded once. "You're right." She turned to Marcus. He stood without a word and placed a folder on the table. Inside were documents, recordings, financial trails that tied Caruso to the very chaos he condemned. Evidence gathered patiently, quietly, without spectacle. The room erupted. Voices clashed, accusations flying, alliances fracturing in real time. Caruso rose halfway from his seat, anger cracking his composure. "This is a setup," he snapped. "You planned this." "Yes," Marcus said evenly. "We did." Caruso's gaze locked on Scarlett, something like disbelief flickering there. "You think this ends me?" "No," Scarlett replied softly. "I think it ends your story the way you've been telling it." The council reached its decision without bloodshed. But the verdict was brutal. Caruso was stripped of protections, isolated, his networks exposed, not condemned outright, but vulnerable. In their world, that was worse. As they left the chamber, the weight lifted slightly, replaced by a fragile calm. Marcus exhaled slowly once they were alone. "You were extraordinary," he said. Scarlett met his eyes. "You trusted me." He nodded. I always did. I just didn't know how to say it. Outside, the city breathed again. For the first time since the night they met, Scarlett felt something like safety not guaranteed. Not permanent, but earned. Marcus took her hand openly, no longer signaling possession, but partnership. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "No," Scarlett agreed. "But it's different now." As they walked into the light, both understood what had changed. The war had shifted from survival to choice. And whatever came next, they would face it together. Not as shields or weapons, but as equals. Standing at the edge of a future they were finally brave enough to want. The aftermath of the council did not arrive with sirens or gunfire. It arrived quietly, like a tide receding after a storm. Caruso vanished from public view. His name no longer spoken with certainty, but with caution. His allies scattered, seeking shelter wherever it could be found. The city exhaled, uncertain but relieved. For the first time in months, Marcus's phone rang less often. When it did, the voices on the other end were measured, respectful. The balance had shifted. Scarlett felt the change most clearly in the mornings. The house no longer woke her with tension humming through its walls. Light streamed through the windows without urgency. Rosa hummed softly as she moved through the kitchen, as if normalcy were something that could be coaxed back into existence. Scarlett stood at the window one morning, watching the city below, and realized she was no longer waiting for the next threat. She was living in the space after it. Marcus joined her quietly, slipping an arm around her waist. The gesture was natural now, unguarded. "It won't last forever," he said, ever the realist. "I know," Scarlett replied, "but neither does fear." He studied her profile, the calm confidence that had replaced the uncertainty he'd first seen in her eyes. "You changed everything," he said. "So did you," she answered, turning to face him. "You just didn't realize it at first. There were decisions to make in the days that followed, not about territory or retaliation, but about direction." Marcus met with his advisors, this time with Scarlett at his side by default. When discussions drifted toward old habits, force, intimidation, silence, Scarlett asked questions that redirected them. What stability actually meant? What kind of legacy endured when violence no longer served? The conversations were not easy, but they were honest. One evening, Marcus took Scarlett to the rooftop terrace overlooking the city. The air was warm, the lights below flickering like a living constellation. He stood with his hands resting on the railing, thoughtful. "I spent my life believing control was the same as safety," he said. "That if I could predict every move, I could prevent loss." Scarlett stepped beside him. And now I know control is a cage," he said quietly, "for everyone inside it." He turned then, facing her fully. The city noise faded, leaving only the space between them. "I never asked you what you wanted," he continued. "Not really. I assumed survival was enough." Scarlett reached for his hand, threading her fingers through his. "It was," she said, "until it wasn't." Marcus nodded, absorbing the truth. "If you walked away," he said, voice steady despite the vulnerability beneath it, "I wouldn't stop you." The words carried no threat, no manipulation, just choice. Scarlett searched his face, seeing the man he was becoming rather than the legend he'd built. "I'm not here because I have nowhere else to go," she said. "I'm here because I choose you." The confession landed softly, profoundly. Marcus's breath caught, just slightly. He lowered himself in front of her, the movement deliberate and unhurried, until he was kneeling, not in submission, not in spectacle, but in honesty. He took her hands, pressing his forehead to her knuckles. "Then let me choose you too," he said, "not as strategy, not as protection, as my partner, as my future." Scarlett's eyes burned. She laughed softly through the emotion, pulling him up into her arms. "You already did," she whispered. Their love did not erase the darkness around them. It did not pretend the world had suddenly become kind, but it reshaped how they faced it. Together, they began dismantling parts of the empire that no longer served, reinforcing others with transparency and restraint. Enemies watched, uncertain. Allies adjusted. The city learned a new rhythm. On the anniversary of their marriage, there was no grand celebration, just a quiet dinner, candlelight, and laughter that came easily now. Marcus watched Scarlett as she spoke, animated and alive, and thought of the night he had offered her a choice wrapped in fear. He thought of how close he had come to losing everything that mattered. "You know," Scarlett said lightly, catching his gaze. "This was never supposed to be a love story." Marcus smiled. "A real one. Unburdened. The best ones rarely are. Later, as they stood together at the window, the city stretching endlessly before them, Scarlet rested her head against his shoulder. The future remained uncertain, shaped by forces neither could fully control. But the fear that once defined them had loosened its grip. They had not won by destroying their enemies. They had won by choosing each other. And in a world built on power and shadows, that choice was the most radical victory of all.